Kinakabahan ka ba whenever you find yourself starting gospel conversations? Dito sa Missio Dei Podcast, we will equip and inspire you to be confident in sharing the gospel and talking to people about Jesus.
So now this person has already understood. This person understood what the pageant is all about, and then his the misconceptions and everything. So he's all going for it now. Now there's another extreme kasi when you go so goal oriented, which is yung parang project based type of evangelism. You know, na parang okay, the Lord calls us to make disciples, so just share the gospel weekly. Whatever the results, basta we did it. You know, may ganon. So, I don't know if kung may report ba or something, or para lang may malagay sa testimony ko that I shared the gospel to a lot of people. May ganong klaseng project na parang turns out to have a good resume of who you are as a Christian. So, how can we destroy that? Like, because it should not be. But how can we remove that kind of a mindset? Yung project-based evangelism. Kasi parang yun nga, sasabi natin, diba, parang it turns out na parang we don't care anymore of the person. Basta we just share to them what we know, then tapos na. Ayoko na, basta, just that's only my job. The rest is to God na, wala na akong pakialam sa'yo.
It almost becomes like task.
Yeah, task-based, project-based.
Yeah.
How can we remove that kind of environment? Kasi it could affect others also. So how can we maybe have experiences or maybe suggestions that how can we remove that in their environment, in their mindset, in their thinking?
You know, when I look at the scriptures, especially the Gospels, there are so many things that are said about Christ. How he was overjoyed, how he wept, how he was tired at times, how he was angry, even righteously angry.
Yeah.
But one of the emerging, if not the most repeated characteristic of Jesus was his compassion. And the word that is used for compassion in the New Testament it's this churning, inward churning, almost like a gut level, heart level churning that you feel for the people around you. Many times it was said in the scriptures, he had compassion on them as sheep without a shepherd. And that's when he did his miracles. He preached the gospel, healed the sick. And so when I'm reminded of those portions of scripture, I'm reminded in my evangelism cannot be project-based. It has to be, if I can use the word, people-based. You know, where you get down to the level of where they're at and you understand from their perspective how's life treating them, and you develop that kind of compassion and love for them, so that it's no longer just, okay, I have to share the gospel to this person, but I want to, because I'm so burdened. I care for this person, even if it's a friend, a colleague, or a stranger, a Grab driver. You just develop this compassion for them, and you ask, "Uy, kuya, kamusta kayo?" And they open up about their stories. Oh, may anak ako sa ganyan. May anak ako, kaya ako nagtatrabaho, ganito. And then you just develop that heart, that burden. And then all of a sudden, the gospel is there. You preach it, and then once you preach it, it's exactly what they need to hear. That there is a Savior who cares for them, who loves them, and who died for them. So I guess that's how we break free from that, task-oriented, duty-bound evangelism. Of course, it's a command, but at the same time, it's a delight. We get to do this with His Spirit and with His power. So for me, that's my personal reminder that it has to be coming from a heart of compassion to share with the lost. So
I love that. And to follow up on that, I think that compassion can be there's things that we can be reminded about to fuel that, because there are times where we do get distracted with everyday life, and it's very easy to lack compassion for others, even our own brothers and sisters, even our loved ones and friends and family members. What more, someone that we don't know personally. But I think understanding the weight and the gravity of this world apart from the gospel understanding that what does that mean? Who am I outside of the gospel? That's separation from God forever. Not just in this life, but for eternity. And so the weight of that, the gravity of that, and understanding that that's what you're saved from. That's what you're not just saved from it, you're promised an eternity with a holy God. And so understanding the weight of that, I think that's what really allows you to really digest the burden that we should actually have for people that do not know Christ.
Yeah.
And that's what should be the fuel behind all of it. That totally, even if there's nothing wrong with organizing, a project or a mission, or there's nothing wrong with that, but that shouldn't be the foundation of why you're doing it, to fulfill a task, right? And so even when you're doing that, even when you are trying to set something up and let's go do this, at the core of that should be a burden for people that are apart from God, that are separated from Him.
Yeah, I'll share a story, just quick story on this. My wife and I, when we were pregnant, we went on a baby moon. Have you ever heard of that, baby?
Or like, so we learned that a baby.
Yeah, before you give birth, and then you just have a last vacation where the two of you, right, before the little one comes in. So we booked this nice trip for just us in Bohol. It was so nice. So I had in my mindset, we're gonna relax before we become parents, sleepless nights, etc. And then once we got to the resort, it was so nice. We got a restful few days, and then until my wife pointed out, hey, we need to share the gospel with the staff of the hotel. And I was, smiling and, yeah, we should. But in my heart, I was like, I'm here to relax. But this is the baby. This is our baby room. This is supposed to be us. But, my wife has a way of sanctifying me. Christ sanctifying me through my wife. So, it just started rather casually, where we would just, during the breakfast buffet, we would ask the staff, the waiters, kamusta? Ganyan. Oh, thank you, salamat sa trabaho niyo. Tapos, we talked to the manager of the restaurant staff, and then we were commending them for their service, which is really good, by the way. And so they were like, oh, wow, praise God. So the days went by, and the manager would keep on approaching us every morning. Oh, do you need anything? And then we just complimented the guy, and he was just like, reciprocating. And then, as we were nearing the end of our baby moon, we were like, okay, this is it. This is the opportunity God has given us. Let's ask the manager if we can pray for the staff.
Set the stage, right?
Yes, yeah. So I was like, that's a great idea, Yvette. You should do that. You should set it up. And then I'll just share the gospel because that's your forte. So she said, well, right? Step to the manager. Hey, we would like to thank your staff. If you can just spare us a few minutes. And then sabi niya, yeah, sige, let's do it tomorrow. Before our staff meeting, we'll gather our wait staff, our other staff. And then the time came. And I was really in my heart, Lord, parang fix my heart kasi I don't feel the gospel urgency. Right? I want to relax, but this is it. So what ended up happening was we went to their staff meeting there. I shared the gospel. My wife prayed for them. And, God just nudged us to give them, a generous tip. Not really so much, but just a tip for each one. So we gave them a tip after that, and then we prayed. And we really thanked them. We thank you for your service. Thank you for how you took care of us. We want to share something with you guys. And they were listening as we shared the gospel to them. And after that, one of them approached us. She was crying. And she said, alam niyo po, sa lahat ng taon na nagtrabaho ako dito, wala pong nangyari ng ganito. No one ever thanked us in the way that you did. And hindi lang yun. Hindi lang yung binigyan niyo kami ng tip na generous. Pero pinag-pray niyo pa kami. And shinare niyo pa kami ng pag-ibig ni Kristo. And I was like, oh my gosh. Mm-hmm. And I remember that was the time that, wow, God really uses even our sometimes inconsistent, our convenience, comfort-filled life, a vacation. But, as a Christian, you're never really on vacation. You're called on mission. So that's our testimony, and we want to share that because that's what God has called us to do, right? Anytime, everywhere, you're called to share the gospel.
We're going now to siguro one of the last questions na din to, yung the extreme naman. So everything went fine. So example like that, diba, na everything's fine, they received it well. Pero how about when we share the gospel and we know what's going on with the world, society, na medyo combative na sila, respond, medyo mabilis yung reflexes sila. Oy, ano na naman yan? Ay, ito ka, ganyan. So they're talking about Jesus in a certain way, and then parang they wanted to catch as much as possible. Na parang they treated us na parang, when we give like flyers and then, no, thank you. Parang ganun na lang yung type of impression. So how can we be, having this kind of wisdom or being wise in handling conversations? Because we mean well. We wanted for them to know Christ. Pero there are times na maybe we're not, fully careful with our words or with our body language or even our language, na parang sa kanila pala it's offensive. How can we, as Christians, how to get wisdom and be winsome on handling conversations?
I do believe that when you discuss the gospel and you discuss sin, it's supposed to be offensive.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, when you discuss someone else's sin, there's a level of offense that they should probably take naturally. Pero I think maybe being wise about how you approach and how you word things, although there's nothing wrong with that, that's actually encouraged. I think not worrying about them being offended is actually what I would, I may be concerned about it, but to worry about it to the point where you're adjusting how you speak to them and maybe even compromising in how effectively you're sharing the truth of the gospel, and kind of catering to how they can digest what it is that you're sharing with them is something that we need to be careful about. Because everybody does have their own little triggers as to what's offensive and what's not. And the gospel is like God, it's steadfast. It doesn't need to be altered. And so in that way, I think we should be wise about our choice of words, mindful about who we're talking to.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it's difficult because sometimes we just met the person we're talking to. Okay. But I mean, we shouldn't lose sight of what it actually is to be kind and patient and humble. I think that's a key as well. I think you touched on it earlier. There's this tendency of like, oh, look, I know this. I'm on this level.
Yeah.
You shouldn't. Come join me. You're on this level. Parang ganun. And it's that's definitely not something that we should give off when we share the gospel. I think it's trying to live out his attributes in sharing the gospel. It's not about what we know about the gospel. It's about who the gospel is from, and it's his character that we should be exuding when we share. So I think when we meet those circumstances where talagang it's rejected, I think you were talking about there's this extreme circumstance where talagang offend sila, nagagalit na sila. I think that's something that we should definitely never take personally, because their offense and maybe even their hatred and their anger isn't really towards you. It's towards God. Yeah, they're offended by the gospel, not you, because you could have easily said something pleasing to them. You could have complimented them, talked about their everyday life and wanted to get to know them and just ask a bunch of questions about them, and they would love you because, oh, this guy just seems to care about me and I get to talk about me all day long. Pero to not take that personally.
Yeah.
Be encouraged that when you share the gospel, it's not about, you're not sharing you, and it's not about them either. It's not. And if they're offended, worst case scenario, they're offended and they start to hate you. They start to display their hatred towards you. They're not actually, their hatred isn't for you. They don't even know you. Their hatred is for you, or for God, I should say. Sorry. So I would say in that extreme circumstances, to display the kind of patience and mercy that God displays towards us, even when we're sinning.
And I think of Paul on his various missionary journeys where he went to a town, he would preach at the synagogue, and if they did not receive his message, he would just go to the Areopagus or the marketplace, and that's where he would continue his preaching. I mean, in Acts 17, he goes to Athens. He connects with the people there, philosophers, thinkers, and he says, "Hey, I perceive that you guys are very religious. You have all these idols anywhere." Yeah, and he even quotes one of their philosophers. In him we live and move and have our being. And to them, when they heard that, oh, this guy knows our culture, our reference, this secular poet. And so I think Paul had this mindset that he wanted to reach them with the gospel, but before that could take place, he would find common ground with them. Trying to relate, right? I think that's how you become winsome. You get into someone's world. You ask about why do they think the way they think, their worldview. You try to ask these open-ended questions, and then the more you get to know the person, the more you are able to craft and contextualize the gospel in such a way that it would be relatable, relevant to the person where they're at. And so in Athens, Paul uses that approach. Some reject him. It's like they were like, "Man, this guy's he's nuts." But some actually follow and say, "Hey, we want to discuss this more." And sometimes that's all you get. Yeah, let's talk about this more. And that's okay. Yeah. And that's the way that sometimes God works in the midst of those conversations.
It's like when Jesus in the gospel said, "Come and see." Just come and see. Sila, diba, they were curious. Just come and see. Just have conversations. I think is one of the important keys, I believe, in evangelism is not just share to them a program or a certain script, but to get to know them as well.
Yeah.
As you will know that they would also realize that's why I need Jesus pala. It's because he's the one who orchestrated everything, he knows everything, and like that. And it's important, I think, to have relationships. I think ang ganda ng points. Even to the testimony, kasi, if you don't compliment yung staff, di ba, parang they would, ano ba yan? Even if you're filled with compassion, if you don't develop relationship or somehow give them a affirmation that they've done a wonderful job.
Right.
Pero parang when you share the gospel still, kanila parang baka wala pa nga woman crying and saying, right? So I observe it's like, it's Bible-based. It's because doon tayo huhugot when we going to have conversations and have evangelism. But I gets good in yung people-based because you have to understand where they're coming from. As Christ showed compassion, so we must also show compassion in sharing the gospel and being patient.
Yeah.
So I believe in the tools. Like, I don't know kung latte drinkers. You latte.
Sometimes.
You're a latte drink.
Yeah.
It's like milk and coffee mixed together.
Yeah.
I know there's some purists, baka my audience that purists. But I'm a latte guy. But it's like that. Na parang the Bible is our foundation, so the coffee, and the milk is somehow the people around us. And it helps us to have this kind of environment that we can share the gospel at the same time. We also get to know where they're coming from. That's what I've learned in our time. I think let's have coffee.
I'll never think of a latte the same way ever again. Just what you shared. It's profound.
Also good. Let's have latte now. Want a latte?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Okay, sure. Let's go. Let's get a latte. All right, let's go.
Thank you for tuning in to the Missio Dei Podcast. If you're watching from YouTube, please do subscribe to our channel. You can also give us a like or follow in Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you want to be more confident in sharing your faith, please join our community and let us know how we could be of help. Cheers!